Welcome back to part 2 of Unit 1, Topic 1. The last thing I asked you to do was to take 5 minutes to reflect on how you would support an old lady with transporting food from the supermarket to her home. Now, after you have hopefully come up with brilliant convergent and divergent ideas, let's have a further look into the phases of the creative process. This is the creative process. And as we talked about before, there is a convergent and there is a divergent phase, right? Actually, it's like the divergent phase comes first and the convergent phase comes later. But you can also see that there is other parts, the 3 dots which you have in the process. The process usually starts with an uploading phase where you make sure that participants can write down what they already know so that they don't have to think about it during the creativity process. Then between the divergent and the convergent phase, you have a turning point where you have to prepare participants to go from the divergent to the convergent phase and to apply a different sort of thinking. And in the end, you should never forget to have a reflection about the process and the results. But you also see that the divergent and the convergent phase, they have 2 sub-phases. In the divergent phase, you first have an inspiration phase, here also called opening 1, and you have an association phase, here also called opening 2. In the convergent phase, you have a combination phase, which is called here closing 1, where you combine ideas. And you have an assessment phase, called here closing 2, where you assess and select ideas. And we are going to look into these phases now, one after the other. But what is important to always remember when you design these processes is that the methods need to fit the phases of the creativity processes. When we're looking at the uploading, then we're looking at a phase at the start of the creative process where people come together and they probably already have ideas in their mind, right? So if you invite people to come to a innovation workshop on a certain topic, they usually already think they have a very brilliant idea. So what you do with the uploading is that you try to visualize what do the participants already know, because that's important, right? Particularly if participants only partly know each other, then they kind of feel obliged to tell the others who are also in the room how clever they are and how good and how expert. If you give them the opportunity to show the others that they have important extant knowledge and to visualize this, that's good, because then they don't have to talk about it during the creative process anymore. They also should be able to note down earlier experience in the topic area and existing ideas for concepts or solutions which you are looking for in your innovation workshop. Because usually the ideas with which participants come are based on what we already know. But that's not necessarily the outcomes that you would like to have, because what you already know is not very creative, right? It's probably not surprising in the sense of the definition of creativity. So that's an important phase, which is very often forgotten. Give the participants the possibility to visualize how good they are, how expert they are, and what brilliant ideas they already have. And that really, really helps you then. Then we come to the first phase of the divergent thinking, the inspiration phase. In the inspiration phase, participants should act based on intuition. So stimulate them let them get attuned to creativity. Don't let them think in this phase. Make them to write down things with a flow method, for example. Make them to do some physical activities that is already related to the question. But don't get them into thinking, reasoning, or anything like that. You should create a friendly and an open atmosphere, and you should choose methods that provoke a high-speed flow of statements and ideas, because a high speed always means people cannot really think, right? So they are acting on intuition, and the more they are acting on intuition, the better it is for you. Then you have the divergent thinking association phase. That's the second phase, the opening two. Here, people would kind of create first ideas, which are not only based on intuition, but also on association. But association is also still a phase where you add more and more things. So you associate to what you intuitively came up. So sense making starts to move in because you're already generating ideas, but it's still not reasoning, for example. So think about methods that enable the participants to come up with ideas, but that do not relate to reasoning or selecting or saying, yeah, this will not work or something. You're still in a phase where your objective is to create more and more and more ideas. Then the next point is the turning points. In the turning point, you're creating awareness that from now on, something new starts, a new phase, right? So the future activities should close what was opened, and the participants must reduce the amount of ideas. This means that they really need to kind of clear their head from the mode of working they have done before. And you can do this either with relaxed exercise, or you can do this with physical exercise, where they do quite a lot of motion. The next phase is convergent thinking, and there you have the combination phase. In this phase, you're combining ideas that have come up in the two earlier phase, and this helps you then to reduce ideas. So you combine ideas, you link them, and you develop them into relatively concrete applications and solutions. This is a very important phase because here your ideas kind of take shape then. And then there's another phase of convergent thinking, that's the assessment phase. In the assessment phase, you're assessing the ideas, these combined ones that you had, and you select the best ones. That's also an important process because there the group has to kind of figure out which are the ideas we would like to work further with and what's the reason for this. So we are kind of preparing then also the group or the organization for finding reasons why these and not other ideas should be followed up. And you need specific methods for this, right? So you cannot use methods that you have used in the inspiration phase, for example, in the beginning for assessing ideas. That doesn't work. The reflection phase is then important for reflecting findings of the workshop, developing follow-up measures, but also for understanding how good was this process, right? How good was the concept development process? What can we improve if we do it next time? And what are actually the solutions that we have developed together? What are they worth? That's important. So now I give you 5 minutes to reflect about, from the creativity methods that you already know, can you come up with one facilitation method for each subphase? So if you're thinking in uploading, inspiration, association, turning point, combination, assessment, reflection. Which of the creativity methods that you know would fit which phase? Just write it down. I give you 5 minutes to think about it. Did you come up with one method per creativity phase? If not, then you will particularly learn a lot of things in the chat 2 unit, because there we are presenting to you our toolbox. If you came up with one method per phase, you also will learn other methods from this toolbox. So now I'm going to move to the next topic, and the next topic is challenges of creative processes. challenges of creative processes relate to the actual structure you should give to such processes. What you should do if you are planning a creative process is first, and you see it on the left hand, bring people together. That is in technical language called create structural links. You bring people from different parts together in one room. What you should also try to is to avoid power structures. So don't put the employees together with their bosses. That doesn't help them. That doesn't help creative processes. And then what we quite often see is that people come together in a room and then somebody says, let's brainstorm. But brainstorming is a method which is aimed at integrating perspectives. Now, what we know is, on the other hand, that everybody has a specific perspective on a certain challenge. So what you should do first is give the participants the opportunity to make their perspective explicit individually, because then you will get a broader variety of ideas and approaches. And you can do so, and that's step 2, by giving them personal exercises. So you either ask them to craft or to draw the problem, or if you really have people like executives who don't want to craft or draw, then you ask them to find headlines. But it should be an individual exercise, and it shouldn't go into integrating perspectives yet. This step is also important because quite often in groups you have people who are louder than others. You have group effects, right? And by doing this individual exercise, at the end of this exercise, everybody will have something in hand. So the others will be curious. And it's much more difficult then to step back and say, well, I thought exactly the same like the other person. This is why methods like crafting or drawing are better than methods where you write, because there people get more curious in understanding what have the other people actually done. So don't forget step 2, make different perspectives explicit, and then you can send people into groups and make them explain their perspectives and integrate them. And this is then how common ideas will evolve. The second challenge, or something similar, has been described by Klaus Otto Scharmer in his theory U, because he's also saying what we usually do is we download, so we come together and we tell each other how great we are, what fantastic experiences we have, and what great ideas we already have. And then we go directly, and you see it on the right side of the U, to prototyping. We are prototyping from past patterns, ideas, and we then call them, very open. But what you really need to learn is, you need to learn to suspend what you know. You need to redirect what you see and to let go what you felt before, and only then you will arrive at the point where you connect to the source of new ideas. And this is why you need a really good facilitated process where you first have this divergent phase, where you first use methods that allow people to act on intuition and to associate. Otherwise, you will not arrive at the presencing phase. Presencing phase is the phase where you pre-sense the future. So entrepreneurs are very good in getting there when they look for opportunities, for future opportunities. And from there, you then can develop new ideas, you can prototype, and you can agree on new methods or new approaches. But first you have to let go, you have to redirect, and you have to suspend. And that's what is very often forgotten. So that's basically the two big challenges in creativity processes which you can overcome if you're trained in facilitating creativity processes. And this is what we're going to teach you in this chat program. So don't worry, in the end you will be able to do all this. So in this subunit, you learned about what is creativity, what is creative thinking, what are the phases of the creative process, and what are challenges of the creative process. Thank you very much for the attention. Here are some references for further reading. And this presentation was created as part of Unit 1 of the CHET project. The author of the slides and the voice was Patricia Wolf from the University of Southern Denmark. Thank you very much for being here. And these are the important websites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts of the project. I hope you enjoyed this unit, and I wish you good luck with the other units of this important training program. Thank you very much for listening.